to the Next Steps Show with Peter Vazquez, a starting point for discussion y un poco de dirección. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back. Y mira, happy Victory Day for World War II 2026. You know, I'll tell you, I like this President we got. You know, on May 8th, right, which is today, the President Donald Trump, proclaimed May 8th, 2026 as a day to celebrate Victory Day for World War II. How exciting, you know? And to all our veterans out there, mira, I hope that today at least you find someplace warm, and may God continue to bless you in the work that you do.
I think the president is referring to Victory in Europe Day.
Well, it was right. We're right. Well, it's celebrating the victory, the support that we gave our European allies working together is what it's supposed to do.
Which is a strange concept considering how little support they give us. But who's keeping track?
You know, it's kind of part of the reasons why I brought it up, Bob, because, you know, it's one of those things that everybody is like, oh, Bob is. I mean, I was watching Kamala Harris yesterday on some Democrat nonsense show that she was on or talking, and you know, she was talking about how Trump is just out there bashing our neighbors and ruining relationships, and I'm like, no, not really. But when I see Trump doing stuff like that, I'm like, okay, I see what he's doing.
She called him incompetent.
Yes, she did.
I mean, talk about somebody with zero self-awareness. Holy moly. First of all, you're the number 2 officer in the Biden administration, for God's sake, and you can't put together a cogent sentence that makes any sense in public, and you're calling Donald Trump. You know, somebody this morning on Glenn Beck's show was referring to him as the greatest president since Washington, and that sounds, you know, at first blush like hyperbole, but stop and think about the accomplishments.
Yep. The accomplishments, the growth for all people, not just blacks and browns or Asians or whatever the heck this you know, these people try to continue to say need help, which, you know, leads me to this conversation we're going to have this hour, ladies and gentlemen. See, because the last conversation I had with today's guest, I asked him whether he needed government help because he is black, and his answer, I thought it was pretty darn powerful. He said, the only government help that I need is for the government to get out of my way. Mira, what a concept. And I can tell you, see, como un Latino, como un Puertorriqueño, como un Boricua, I say the same thing. And the thing is, that ain't just a quote. That's a worldview, ladies and gentlemen, and it should be. That's a declaration of God, country, and familia. That is the rejection of the dependency politics. See, it is a reminder that dignity, check this out. You don't believe me? You know, just look out your window. Dignity does not come from bureaucrats, programs, slogans, or politicians who barely know the people that they claim to rescue. You know, the ones that they bamboozled. So, ladies and gentlemen, joining us once again, this time for the full hour, is the Honorable Phil Bell, founder and CEO of Tower K Group and a Project 21 ambassador. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor to introduce him. See, once again, Phil, thank you again for joining us.
Peter, thank you so much for having me. I always love joining you here. You have a great show. I love your values. I love the people of Western New York. And I love hearing those ads in places like Cornell and Lake Alfred and every place else, all that I know from railroading. So this is truly an honor.
And there's a lot of railroads up here, I'll tell you. You know, one of the things that I love about the work that you do, sir, is that it truly does show, right, that you understand, that you're trying to teach not just blacks and browns, como dije, pero just Americans to understand that we are Americans and all these other labels don't matter. I mean, quoting you again from the last time I had you on for a few minutes. You know, you said when the government's here to help, Americans should be checking their wallets, their freedoms, and then exit the door quickly, especially for those of us that have a little bit more pigmentation.
Absolutely. I couldn't have said it better myself, because one of the things I always wondered, I remember when I was a kid in the early 90s and you started to hear using the phrase African-American. People running around, oh, you're African-American because a few years before it had been you're black. And then I started to ask myself, why would I want to put anything ahead of being an American? We have the best country. We have the greatest opportunities. Even the poor among us live in a way that is so much higher than even the kings of the ancient world. And yet we have so many people that say, oh, I want to segment that. I want to put something else ahead of that, or I want to set that aside. And it just boggles my mind.
Absolutely. Phil, I want to spend a few minutes on you. You know, you're an impressive guy, the work that you're doing. I think that you're a perfect example of what the left, especially those here in New York and Colorado, California, right, are trying to say that we can't do. Sir, you are the founder and chief executive officer of Tower K Group. Can you talk to us a little bit about your role and what is it that Tower K Group does?
Yes, so let me tell you a little story. I worked for almost 7 of the biggest grassroots organizations on the center right. Well, Freedom Works shut down, and I had always wanted to start my own business. And so I was talking with my bosses, you know, everything was kind of winding down. And he said, you should do it. And it started as a business to raise money for conservative nonprofit organizations, which is what I had been doing previously in the first place. And then we started to grow. We started to grow by doing events. We started to grow by doing media. And we started to grow by doing public affairs. And now we do all of those. So at our core, it is promoting our values in a for-profit way. So free markets, individual liberty, limited government, personal responsibility. And we do it by working with a lot of the great people that you hear out here that are saying a lot of these good things and helping to educate the public. We help make sure that they have the money they need, the outlets, being able to get on to shows like yours, have their word out there, and advance that in every way. So that's what Tower K Group does.
Man, I'll tell you. Tell me, you're the chief executive officer. I'm assuming that comes with responsibility. You're a leader. You're leading people. This whole mantra, right, well, you know, we said it right at the beginning where you said, government, get out of my way. Can you expound a little bit? Because here in New York, at least, and I know many states that are similarly situated, will have us believe that a position like chief executive officer is beyond our reach. We're unable to get there for one reason or another, usually tied, well, to race or circumstances.
Right. You're right. And that's one of the things that's so distressing. When I look out and I see the type of role models that the culture promotes, first of all, they denigrate business leaders in the first place. If you're a chairman, if you're a chief executive officer, if you're a wealthy individual, which, by the way, I am not, in case the IRS is listening, you know, they say, well, somehow you had to get to that position by doing something mean because you had to step on somebody. You had to take something from someone that you didn't earn. So that's the first thing they do. And then the second thing, they'll go out and say, well, wait a minute. How are you ever going to get to be that? I remember when I was a little boy and I said, I want to own a railroad. And the first thing that would happen is people would laugh at me. How can you ever do that? How can you ever do that? How could you be the head of this? You don't know this. You don't know that. You don't know the other activity. First of all, you don't know what I know. But second of all, why is it that you don't want to envision being the best? Because that way, even if you envision being the CEO and you don't quite get there, maybe you get to be the senior VP. Maybe you get to be the junior vice president. Maybe you get pretty high up there and you're able to influence positive things happening in your industry, in your community, in your state, or otherwise. All of those would be a great thing. And that's why I hope as many people that are listening here, if you are inspired to do it, if God guides you in that direction, don't let anybody throw you off of that.
Absolutely. And to boot, you're in banking, which, you know, again, you listen to the mantra, banking should be, you know what, if I were to listen to the mantra that I've been raised with here in Rochester, New York, Phil, I wouldn't be on the radio. I wouldn't be the leader of an organization. I wouldn't be, you know, a father of 5 successful children, you know, that are handling their business. So in January 2026, you wrote a commentary that's on project21.org or nationalcenter.org. The title of it was $100 cost that could lock millions out of home ownership. And, you know, I thought this was a great piece because you argue that eliminating, right, this was in regards to the government saying they want to eliminate credit reports. If I remember correctly, they even tied race to it. They said that it will save a home owner roughly about $100. But you explained pretty detailed in there why that's not a good idea and how these feel-good laws, these feel-good rules, which is what this is, right, ends up cutting a lot of people, especially people of color, out of, or people that are poor, out of buying a house, home ownership. I mean, again, you listen to the left, home ownership should just be given to you. That's not something you work for. It's not a money-making scheme. It's a birthright.
Right. And I encourage anyone who believes that it is a birthright or that you should have home ownership given to you or have anything given to you, go look at the pictures of some of the things that are given to you in communist countries or socialist countries. You know, in the Soviet Union, they gave you food and you waited in very long lines to get it. In Cuba, they give you housing and nobody really enjoys it. So you don't want what is quote unquote given to you. You want what you earn and you want the ability to earn it. Now, as for that piece I wrote, here's the story. There are 3 major credit bureaus. We're all familiar with them, such as Experian, TransUnion, and so on.
Hey, Phil, I got to go to break real quick. We're going to have to pick this up here in about a minute, but I want you to hold on to that thought because what you're about to say, I think, is the most important concept that we all need to understand. Ladies and gentlemen, the Honorable Phil Bell, founder and CEO of Tower K Group, Project 21 ambassador, and an American, right, who knows God, country, and family. We'll be right back right here on the Next Step Show with Peter Vazquez.
The Voice of Liberty, WYSL, WLEA.
It's gonna be alright, it's gonna be alright. Organic ingredients, no high fructose corn syrup ever. A little sweet, definitely bold. For the flavor freaks, backyard grill masters, kitchen rebels. Savor Hectic and Kickin' Ketchup, Hectic barbecue sauce, or Hectic honey, Hectic hot sauce, and Hectic gold. If you like bold flavor with attitude, it's Hectic Foods, 101 Main Street in East Rochester. Hours at hecticfoods.com.
A little hectic. Grill it, just a little hectic. Taste it, bring a little hectic to your next barbecue.
The youth of our city are in a new crisis. Criminal justice reform has created the consequences of no consequences and generated a whole new generation of 12 to 17-year-old kids committing serious crimes. Never before have we had this level of youthful offenders. But 90% of these kids are just trying to do the right thing and need a safe sanctuary to retreat to. That's Rochester Youth for Christ. You can be a part of this solution by giving generously and regularly at yscrochester.org/donate.
Peter Vazquez, the Next Step Show on the Voice of Liberty.
WYSL and WLEA. Next Step's brought to you by Youth for Christ Rochester, yscrochester.org. Let Peter pick up with his guests where they got cut off going into the break.
Ay, sí, por seguro. Gracias, señor Sabaje. I appreciate you. Mark Turner on social media, thank you for posting. Hey, Phil, a listener on social media said James Brown, where he quoted him saying, I don't want nobody to give me nothing, right? Open the door and I'll get it myself. That was back in 1970. Isn't that something, huh? How back in the day they understood that same concept as well.
Well, think about it. You know, even as much as I hate the discussion of slavery because I feel like in the United States we take it much too far. Not as a historical thing, but it just becomes cultural, which is wrong. But if you are a descendant of slaves, then you know what happened when you're given something. They were given a job. They were given a place to live. They were given purpose. And none of that is anything that we would want. So that's a great way to say, hey, if somebody wants to give you something in 2026, say, you know what, I would rather go out and earn it myself.
So California's reparations, and I'm sorry, we got to get back to the bank discussion here because I think that's important. But when you look at that, because what you just said was pretty powerful. But I was watching a comedian, I forgot his name now, Snyder, I think is his last name, but he was making